The 70th annual Oscar nominations list was announced this week in Los Angeles, and there were some stunning exclusions. Most notably, Leonardo DiCaprio, not nominated as Best Actor for his striking performance as a charismatic working-class passenger romancing an engaged society girl in Titanic.
I'm not an idiot. I know how the world works. I've got $10 in my pocket. I have nothing to offer you, and I know that. I understand. But I'm too involved now. You jump, I jump, remember?
Now, why was the nation's other movie heartthrob of the moment, Matt Damon, nominated as Best Actor, but not DiCaprio, who, in my opinion, gave an even better performance? Well, Matt Damon beautifully co-wrote his genius role in Good Will Hunting, and he and his partner Ben Affleck were nominated for that. But the actors who nominated in this category may have been so impressed that he actually wrote himself a great part, which is every actor's fantasy, that they gave him extra points and nominated here. DiCaprio, thus, was robbed, in my opinion, in a role he is absolutely romantic in, and as an actor, he's so creatively unpredictable. He's responsible for a lot of Titanic's repeat business, and here's a note: if he had been justly nominated, Titanic would have become the all-time movie record holder with 15 nominations.
Well, you know, you're right about DiCaprio. Not nominating him for Titanic is like not nominating Clark Gable for Gone with the Wind.
Wow.
I mean, what are they thinking when they didn't nominate? Everybody must have said, oh, you're going to vote for Leonardo, or you're going to vote for Leonardo. And I'm not taking anything away from Damon, but who was also just wonderful,
yeah,
and a great movie. But I think maybe when they vote, they're always thinking of the story. Gee, how nice it would be if Matt Damon, who wrote this screenplay, I'll vote for him. And of course, there are four other people that got voted for too, so you never know who decided what. But DiCaprio is the one that missed the boat, so to speak, and it isn't fair.
And we know he's a good actor. It's not that he's just the greatest looking kid in the world. I mean, What's Eating Gilbert Grape?
Oh,
this
yeah,
kid is a tremendous
actor. So he'll win an Oscar next year or 3 years ago, and it'll be a consolation prize. Okay.
Good point.
Another title a lot of people were surprised to see missing from many top categories was Steven Spielberg's Amistad, which was not nominated for either Best Picture or Best Director. It did get a nomination for Oscar favorite Anthony Hopkins in the supporting role of John Quincy Adams. My own feeling was that this exclusion didn't come as that much of a surprise. Amistad chose a difficult story to tell about a boatload of Africans who were charged with murder and what was the proper defense for them. Matthew McConaughey, as a real estate lawyer, meets with two abolitionists here and explains his very practical approach to the case.
On the other hand, let's say they aren't slaves. Well, if they aren't slaves, then they were illegally acquired, weren't they? Forget mutiny, forget piracy, forget murder and all the rest. Those are subsequent, irrelevant occurrences. Ignore everything but the preeminent issue at hand, the wrongful transfer of stolen goods.
All three courtroom scenes in the movie hinge, therefore, not on the moral issue of slavery, but on the legal issue of property. It was hard to make that clear, and the storyline didn't create a well-defined emotional appeal to the audience. Even the victory at the end was sort of hollow. If Spielberg had been able to make the same powerful emotional appeal that he created in The Color Purple or Schindler's List, I think Amistad would have been nominated. But as it is, I think if you gave an exit poll to a lot of people going to see that movie, they wouldn't be able to clearly tell you really what the movie was about.
To his credit, what he did was try to tell the historical record, which is, this is a victory for the American legal justice system and for African Americans. I mean, it is a victory. And in the images of lawyers that are so negative in the movies today, here were some lawyers who did the good work of this country. Well, it's tough to tell that. It's very
tough to tell it, and it wasn't. That's why I think it wasn't nominated.
I agree.
Because people didn't leave the theater saying,
yes,
wow.
Okay, when we come back, the Oscar nominations that were made that surprised us, but absolutely delighted us.
You sexy thing, you.
Continuing our discussion of the Oscar surprises, we come now to the good news. Nominees we were surprised but happy to see included, and right at the top of my list is Robert Forster, nominated as Best Supporting Actor for Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown. Forster's perfectly modulated work here was one of the year's real acting high points as he played a middle-aged man who was good at his job but tired of doing it.
Possession of unregistered machine guns.
Damn. Now, they're going to consider that a violation of his probation?
They do consider this a violation of his probation.
Forster and Pam Grier create an understated relationship in Jackie Brown that is a joy to behold. Now, this is the kind of mature, thoughtful, quietly powerful acting that you rarely find in the movies, and credit to Tarantino, too, I think, for writing such a complex role. On our annual memo to the Academy, where we advise voters on who we think they ought to nominate, Forster was one of my choices, and I let out a shout Tuesday morning when the voters apparently agreed.
Well, you called him thoughtful and mature, and I want to say restrained. Think about this situation. You're an actor who's been very good, but now you're out of work, basically. You're doing voiceover stuff. You get the chance of your comeback to play in a Tarantino picture, and yet you're confident enough to be restrained. He doesn't push his role, and that's so exciting.
It's perfect control of tone. That's what it is, and it keeps the romance underneath the surface instead of them jumping into bed as they would in a routine
I would
thriller.
love to see that I'd love to see that the Oscar nominators spotted all this subtlety.
Right. Another pleasant surprise was the strong showing by The Full Monty, which got 4 nominations, including Best Director and Best Picture. It was a human comedy about a group of unemployed British steelworkers who decide that if the Chippendale dancers can make big bucks as strippers, so can they.
Now the bells ring, now the 2, 3, 4, now the top, 4. Carry on.
The Full Monty was a comedy, but the characters were as real and as clearly seen as in any of the year's dramas.
Yes, it's a terrific film, and I would challenge American screenwriters again. We don't write comedies about working-class people.
No, we don't.
Do the screenwriters in Hollywood even care about people being out of work as an issue in their life?
Audiences are hungry for this story. That's why they took it, accents and all.
Good. And here's another surprise inclusion that absolutely delighted me. I was taken aback, but totally support the 2 nominations of The Sweet Hereafter for its director and screenwriter, the talented young Canadian filmmaker Adam McGoyan, who drew a powerful psychological portrait of a town devastated by a school bus accident that kills 14 youngsters and brings a mysterious lawyer to town offering to help.
I will sue. I will sue for negligence until they bleed.
The Sweet Hereafter was not a box office hit, but Academy members are sent videotape copies of most of the pictures that are up for consideration, and enough voters obviously screened The Sweet Hereafter on tape to recognize the film's many fine qualities.
I was so happy, as you were, to see Adam McGoyan nominated as Best Director, because he is one of the few directors in North America right now who is still trying to make quirky, eccentric, personal films. He's in the tradition of Robert Altman and Martin Scorsese and the great directors of the 60s, and he's still plugging away, and boy, this film was powerful.
And if people want to learn more about his work, rent Exotica, a really terrific film of his. My other delightful surprise was in the Best Documentary category. In years past, so often the subject of controversy for not nominating the year's most popular documentaries. Not true this year. Rightfully receiving a nomination this year, Spike Lee's wonderful 4 Little Girls about the infamous 1963 Birmingham church bombing.
I remember coming down the steps of Addie's and Denise's funeral and letting go of the casket. I don't know, I just lost something, you know.
You'll have several opportunities to see 4 Little Girls on HBO beginning February 23rd. Also nominated as Best Documentary this year, and I'm glad it was, Waco, The Rules of Engagement, directed by David Gizecki and executive produced by Dan Gifford and Amy Summer Gifford. The tragic story of the standoff between the federal government and the Branch Davidian settlement in Waco, Texas.
With its appropriations hearings a week away, a large, successful raid would produce major positive headlines to counter the ATF's reputation as a rogue agency whose debacles blackened the reputation of other agencies.
Another celebrated documentary this year, Errol Morris's Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control, was wrongly not nominated. The Documentary Screen Committee got 2 out of 3 right on this year's high-profile documentaries. That's a very good batting average for them, and congratulations.
Yeah, but you know, and I agree with you, but the 2 that they nominated, as we've said before about this committee, are traditional documentaries. They're sound bites and newsreel footage and old photographs, and it's all put together.
Historical record.
Historical record. Another film that I know they were considering was Little Dieter by Werner Herzog, which is a story where a guy tells what happened to him in Vietnam 25 years ago. And that one, like Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control, is experimenting with the form. And these people seem to be terrified by anything that doesn't look just like a Walter Cronkite 20th century show from 30 years ago.
Okay, so even when you get most of it right, one of us has some complaints. Coming up next, another look at the movies we reviewed on this show.